are you gambling too much? It's a question that we probably ask ourselves, and if I'm completely honest, it's probably a question that people around you ask you as well, and sometimes in different ways, but quite often you might be questioned about your gambling. And in this video, I kind of want to address what I think gambling too much might look like, and maybe how to identify those red flags that, yes, maybe we are gambling too much and it's time to do something about it. Ultimately, this is a very, very destructive addiction, and if we can spot the signs of addiction early, then we are far more powerful to overcome it and to get into some form of recovery. I will preface all of this by saying, look, gambling isn't inherently bad. It can be incredibly dangerous. It can be incredibly harmful, but there are a significant number of people who enjoy it recreationally, who enjoy it casually. I've always said that I'm very much anti the blanket banning of things. Obviously there are some things which are that bad and that dangerous that they should be banned. However, gambling should be, I believe, a free choice, but I certainly think I think regulation could be better, but that's a subject for another day. I think it's very much on us, particularly in the modern world when gambling is everywhere and it's available 24/7 and it's available incredibly easily and freely, to equip ourselves with a bit of knowledge and the ability to recognise the red flags. And this is something that I think I would have loved to have been talked to about when I was younger, not the sort of standard issue, gambling's bad, don't gamble, it's going to ruin your life, because as I've spoken about many times, that isn't a way to put people off, particularly young people who want to go out, they want to try stuff, they want to experiment. I've recently started a new job and I work with an awful lot of young people, and they pretty much all bet on football, they bet on horses, they gamble in some way, shape or form. And I think if I just went around telling everyone that gambling's bad, don't gamble, you're going to end up like me, you're going to end up broke, you're going to end up ruining your life, most of them wouldn't listen, because most of them haven't actually experienced any of the negative effects, apart from maybe the odd financial loss. But if they're gambling recreationally and they're gambling with money they can afford to lose, then they're not going to feel that. So when does that, when you're having the odd £5 football acca on a Saturday, something we're not going to be able to have in a couple of weeks' time, are we? When does that become a problem? And I think quite often, and I think this might relate to yourself if you're watching this video, if you start to question whether you're gambling too much, then the chances are you've probably been gambling a little bit too much for a while. Now, before I go any further, actually, I want to say I hope you're keeping safe, hope you're keeping sane, hope you're enjoying the glorious weather. I mentioned in a previous video that I haven't had any responses at all to my request for people to get in touch if they want to be interviewed, take part in a conversation, a sort of podcasty kind of styley thing. Like I say, it might be because people don't want to share their stories. It's a very personal thing and it's a very emotional thing to talk about, and I totally understand that. Or it might be because I set it up to message me through Patreon. Now, that was with a good intent. I believe you can be a free member of my Patreon. However, it might be that you can't DM me if you're a free member, and I don't want to force people to have a paid membership to message me. So what I've done, or what I will do, is get an email address sorted. You can email me on. Please only email me regards that, because I can't guarantee I'll get back in time. If you need if you need immediate support for your gambling addiction, I will put the numbers, email addresses, websites, etc. of organisations, of charities and of people far smarter and far better equipped to help you with your immediate requirements than myself. They will be in the description below, and please do seek help if you need something immediately. Don't do it through me, because hours can be critical if you're at a low point, and I can't promise when I can get back to you. All right. So when is gambling too much? Now, it's, it can be summed up, albeit horribly cliched and in a very unhelpful way, by the bandied around term, when the fun stops, stop. All right. Now, I think it's fairly obvious to say that if you are no longer enjoying the process of gambling, then it is something you're doing outside of yourself. You are not controlling your own actions. There's very few occasions in life where we use our spare time and our spare resources, gambling, it's mostly going to be money, all right, to undertake things that we don't get pleasure from. Yeah, there'll be things like gardening and all that sort of stuff, but ultimately you're doing that to an end goal. But generally speaking, the things we spend our time and our leisure time and our money on are things we enjoy. So ultimately, if you are gambling, but you're not actually enjoying it, then yes, that's a massive, massive red flag. But I will take that one step further, and I think this can be applied to a lot of other potentially addictive or harmful behaviours, and say that it's something where if the payoff, all right, is lower than the investment, then you're doing it too much. Now, in gambling, that sounds really very much like I'm saying if you're getting, if you're winning less than you're losing, then that's a problem. Well, that's not really the case, because ultimately, if you gamble, in the vast majority of instances, you're going to lose more than you win. What I'm saying is, if the total net return of everything is lower than the total net investment of everything, that is when it's a problem. What do I mean by that? Well, ultimately, if you're gambling, you're investing, not just your money. All right, that's the most obvious one, but also you're investing your time. And that's not just time as a sort of an abstract factor. It's in time you could be doing something else. I take a slight aside. One of the biggest things that told me I had a problem was when I used to go out with friends. We used to go out in towns and go around the pubs or whatever. They used to be sitting having a chat about football or women or whatever it is blokes talk about. And I used to be over on the fruit machine, right? So I'm missing out on, that's the cost, right? The cost is foregoing something else that I'd probably enjoy, all right, to undertake the gambling on the fruit machine. All right, so it's not just time as an abstract thing, it's time you could be spent doing other things. Yeah, the financial cost, the cost that maybe when you get home you're going to be a bit late and you're going to have an argument with the missus. There are other sort of more hidden costs as well. And again, the return is not just financial. Ultimately, if it was ultimately a money in, money out game, right, we'd never get addicted. We'd never bother, because you're always going to lose in the long run, bar a few certain examples, right? So if it was just money in versus money out, you'd never get addicted, because you'd gamble a few times, you'd lose more often than you won, and you think, this is stupid, I'm not doing this again. All right, but the return isn't just financial, is it? It's about dopamine, I talked about in my last video. It's about the buzz, it's about the entertainment factor of the games, the suspense, all the rest of it. Okay, so when your return, i.e. your enjoyment, you can always disregard the financial return, that's just a bonus. The enjoyment, the pleasure you're getting from it, the anticipation, the dopamine is then lower than the horrible after effects, the time cost, the financial cost of gambling. That is when you're doing it too much. And the same can be applied, to be fair, for most harmful addictions. Alcohol, for example. All right, you can go out, have a pint, sit in the sunshine, lovely weekend for it. Go out, sit in the sunshine, enjoy your beer. Yeah, the beers cost you £6 or whatever a pint costs these days. You're enjoying it though. You do it. You have a couple more. You get that slight relaxed feeling that you get after a couple of 3 pints. And you're enjoying yourself. And maybe you're sitting, you're chatting, you're thinking, yeah, this is worth my, couple of hours, £20 investment, whatever it is. Enjoying that. Okay. If you're then there 3-4 hours later and the cost has become, financially high, yes, but now you're doing harm to your health. Maybe you've sat out in the sun too long, you started getting sunstroke, your mates have disappeared off, and the return is getting lower and lower. Diminishing returns, obviously, on the alcohol, diminishing returns on the enjoyment of the sunshine and the refreshment and the conversation. All right, and suddenly you find that the cost of this session of sitting in the beer garden is higher than the total returns of every positive thing that's come from it. Then that is potentially a problem. Difference with alcohol, of course, is that you have things like nights out, stag do's, all the rest of it, okay, where you probably do end up drinking more than you're enjoying drinking. Doesn't necessarily mean on that occasion, as it's a one-off, it's a problem. All right, maybe that's just because you're swept along with the occasion, all right, and let's face it, there's something antisocial about leaving a stag do halfway through. But in general, if you find yourself drinking regularly and you find yourself drinking, more than you're getting in return from that, whatever it is you're doing, the same way as gambling. If if the enjoyment you're getting, if the dopamine rush you're getting, if the the pleasure you're getting from the experience is lower than the cost of financial and time and relationships and arguments and all the rest of it, all right, that's a red flag. It might happen occasionally, but if you find it happening more frequently, if you find it happening more than a handful of times, that is a massive red flag. And I think that is probably the easiest way to determine whether you're gambling too much. But I think even easier than that, all right, is the very fact that you are watching this video. Look, I know I have a gambling addiction. I know that I had a gambling addiction long before I acknowledged it and tried to do anything about it. And whilst I don't like to label myself an addict, I know it's something that I can't do in a rationed, reasonable way. But I do know for a fact that I was questioning myself and people were questioning me long before I really actively, openly acknowledged it. So if you are questioning it, if that's the reason you clicked on this video, then the chances are you're already gambling too much. But the good news is that, acknowledging it earlier, it makes it a lot easier to deal with. The addiction may not fully have hold of you yet. You just need to recognise the signs and take steps, which I won't go into now because there's plenty of videos on this channel about that. But start taking the steps to to getting yourself away from this, and basically, not messing up the coming years of your life and missing out on opportunities and relationships and productivity and work and all the rest of the good stuff that we live for, the things that make life worthwhile. Until next time, though, stay safe, stay sane, enjoy the sunshine, if there's still sunshine by the time I put this video out, and speak to you all again soon, guys.